in Baltimore and double. We have a new wide receiver making strides here in Jeremy Maclin. And, this guy wrote about Jeremy Maclin before he signed with the Ravens as a potential Pro Bowl player, not in the past, but in the future. He is Doug Farrar. He covers all things NFL at Bleacher Report. He is a great follow out on Twitter, especially if you're on the correct side of the political aisle. He is BR_Doug Farrar. That's 2 R's. AR, and we welcome him in from the rainy city of Seattle, where I had a lovely 48-hour period of time for Mother's Day and Bono and all things Pac West. What's going on, Doug? Jeremy Maclin to the Ravens. Good news for Ravens fans, yes?
Well, I think so. I mean, they've lost a good, 250 targets in the offseason through injuries and free agency defections and whatnot, and obviously you hope that Perriman can stay healthy and sort of take that role. Wallace is what he is. And it's funny when the Chiefs signed Maclin, I mean, what I knew of him in Philadelphia was that he was and is ideally, he's an intermediate to deep receiver with, and all this I detail in my piece on Bleacher Report, really good intermediate to deep receiver with a really an advanced sense of what I would call route development, how to beat guys in short spaces, how to turn your body so you can catch the ball and the defender can't. And if you watch the tape of him, even in 2016 when he missed 4 games and had all those injuries, he could still hang, guys like Jason Verrett, who was also hurt last year, up to dry. When he's healthy, when he's at his peak, Maclin thrives in a deep passing game. And of course, the Chiefs will never be that with Alex Smith. It's the reason they traded up to take Patrick Mahomes in the first round, because everyone loves Smith and his efficiency, but you get a little tired of the lack of explosive plays. In this offense, now, both in Philadelphia and Kansas City, Maclin ran a West Coast offense. So he understands the entire route tree. He understands the timing and rhythm structure of the West Coast offense. And, again, he's best as an intermediate to deep receiver. It would be hard to find a better fit for him than Marty Mornhinweg's offense, which, of course, has West Coast principles. And also with Joe Flacco, you're going to want to throw the deep ball. Flacco's deep numbers were down last year. I think that was partly due to his own inefficiency and partly because I think maybe because of the running game. The passing game became a little more possession-based. And
he did get chased around a little bit. And, on the longer routes, when you're getting chased around, and he was on a bad knee, and he was coming back. I mean, there are a lot of reasons for what happened here last year. And,
right.
At least to some degree, they've tried to address them a little bit, right?
Right. And the thing about Maclin is, if you throw it in, one of the things I like most about him as a player is if you throw it in his general area, by which I mean, say, 2 to 3 yards away from him in a specific area, he's going to do a lot. Now, he's not Anquan Bolden. He's not a contested catch receiver, but he has a really good awareness of how to, at full speed, at full stride, break off from coverage at the very last second to catch a ball. And I think that was something Flacco was missing last year. I mean, Mike Wallace has developed to a point as a route runner. Mike Wallace is a great receiver, but Mike Wallace also kind of is what he is, and we all know that.
Well, you said the second time you said that he is what is he then? He's certainly not chopped liver, but he's certainly not the guy he was 6-7 years ago in Pittsburgh either, right?
Well, I would equate it to a baseball analogy. I think he came into the league as a fastball pitcher, started to lose a little bit. Maybe he went from 99 to about 95. And he said to himself, I better develop a cutter. So he advanced his route concepts a little bit. You get down to 93, 92, maybe I better throw a little slurve in here or something. And,
maybe you can teach me the knuckler.
But this is not, Mike Wallace, in my opinion, Mike Wallace is an excellent productive receiver, not so much a technician. And in a deep ball offense, you don't necessarily need to be as long as you can beat your guy. Maclin, I would say, as long as he's healthy and at his age, is still a speedster, but he's also a technician. And he brings, I would say, a subtlety to the routes, especially at the tail of them, right when the ball is in his area, that the Ravens really haven't had. I mean, they had it with Steve Smith, obviously, but they haven't had it since.
He is Doug Farrar. You can follow his journey out at Bleacher Report and BR_Doug Farrar. That's FARRAR. And we're talking all things Ravens at this point. You mentioned Perryman and what happens to him and who's going to be on the field and what sort of combinations and how they will utilize him. Are you still a believer in him? I mean, the Ravens did a good job all offseason, and Harbaugh did, of saying he's still a number one pick. He wasn't healthy the first year. He made some strides in the second year. This is a big year for him. He's going to be a big part of what we're going to do. But yet the minute Macklin was available, and even Decker, I don't know whether they believe in him. I don't know whether scouts or people like you that really do watch a lot of films still believe in him.
Well, the thing about Perriman, we haven't really seen what he's able to do. That really hasn't come across yet, and it's unfortunate, but it's just sort of the reality of things. When I say we haven't seen what he's able to do, I mean consistently in that development.
Well, Macklin's going to bring something to him, though, too, right? Having Macklin on the field is going to make it a lot harder to guard the whole combination on the back end, right?
Yeah, I think with Perriman, it's kind of a thing where you have to decide what sort of player you are. Speaking, about him, are you going to develop your route concepts, or are you going to be more the big physical guy? Now, of course, the greatest receivers are all of those things. Macklin is not a physical guy, but he's certainly a great technician. Wallace, again, he has a certain skill set. Perriman, I think obviously they believe in him. They took him in the first round, but you still have to sort of wait and see, is he that number one receiver over time? Just because you draft a guy in the first round doesn't mean he's a first-round receiver. And if you believe that all the guys you took in the first round are first-round talents, that's how you kind of tend to go 3 and 13. So, what it is all hands on. The modern passing game, you're throwing the ball 65% of the time. You're in 3-by-1 personnel at least 2/3 of the time. If you don't have 3 established receivers, and you can factor in the tight end or not, but if you don't have 3 established receivers, you're going to have a real problem in today's NFL. So, if they go after Decker, I'm not surprised at all, because Decker, brings a different set of attributes. But yeah, you really can't have too many good receivers in the 2017 version of the National Football League. That's just not possible. You need as many guys as you can get.
Well, and they thought that at the tight end position, right? Where at one point there's Pitta, Watson, Waller, Boyle, Crockett Gilmore. Pitta's down now. Watson was back out on the field this week, running around for minicamp, which I guess is good news. Crockett Gilmore was unavailable on Tuesday. But, you talk about the 3-by-1s and how they structured the offense. There are a lot of 2 tight ends that this offense wanted, that Joe wanted, that I think when it came to protecting Joe, I don't know that they had a whole lot of confidence even before he got his leg injured, which is one of the reasons he was out there getting his leg injured, with a neophyte and James Hurst running around, who now appears to be the right tackle. But there are real questions about this offensive line, and at the end of the day, a lot of questions about the offensive line and a lot of pressure on the quarterback right now, given where the franchise is, given what his price tag is, given where he's been, and given that this franchise hasn't made the playoffs 3 out of 4 years.
Right. Well, I mean, if you want to look at the whole picture, Flacco, it helps that he has what I believe has the potential to be a top 3 or 4 defense. They already had a great defense. They obviously went whole hog in the draft on that. I believe all but one pick was on defense. The offensive line is a part of the problem. The lack of what I would call an upper tier running game is also a problem, because it allows defenses to play you one way, or 1.5 ways, as opposed to, oh gosh, we really don't know what he's going to do. And most NFL quarterbacks, their deep plays are predicated off play action. And when you don't have an upper level, really consistently credible run game, it's really hard to get away with that. The only guy I've ever seen who could fake to a running back who wasn't there and still make people sink because he was so mobile was maybe Aaron Rodgers, maybe Michael Vick in his heyday. But so they do have offensive line issues, and they've had some attrition there. And then you don't necessarily have, maybe it's a committee thing and that's enough, but there are a lot of ifs there, and that puts the brunt of it on Flacco. And he had some mechanical issues. I felt he was pushing the ball at times, which he has a tendency to do. His mechanics got a little folded up. And, aside from the pressure, just watching him in isolation, when I see a quarterback who isn't efficient in a clean pocket, that's where I start to worry. Because you can make all sorts of, the route concepts aren't original. The offensive line stinks. The running back missed a block. But when I watch a guy in a clean pocket and there are still communication issues, which there at times were with Flacco, maybe that's getting to him. I don't know. But, that offense, it in theory is a very well-designed, orchestrated thing that just works, like most West Coast offenses are. When it's not working, you tend to start to reduce chunks of pages from the playbook and say, well, we can't do this, we can't do that because we don't have this guy or that guy, or this concept won't work because of our personnel. And that puts you as an offense betwixt and between. So now they're trying to load up with receiver personnel, which I think is a really smart thing to do.
He is Doug Farrar from Bleacher Report. You can follow his journey, and tens of thousands do at @BR_Doug Farrar. That's FARRAR. Officially the NFL lead scout at Bleacher Report, and a rock and roller as well. And you mentioned Flacco, and I know you're working on a piece right now on the top 10 most accurate quarterbacks, correct?
Yeah, that'll go up Friday.
Yeah, where does Flacco fit going into his 33rd year, having been here, a decorated guy in a franchise that was always led by its defense? I think he's a little underappreciated to some degree, but I also understand statistically through the course of the middle of the season, it's been hard to have his back the last 2 or 3 years, but also he's had a lot of talent leave on both sides of the ball, to your point. The salary cap thing is, a little bit unfair just in the concept and how it works, that if you have a quarterback that does this, you pay him $25 or $30 million, and that's just the way it works. We went about a generation and a half around here without a quarterback. Billick got himself fired not having a quarterback, as he always likes to say. So I'd rather have Joe Flacco than
ironic thing ever, of course.
Right, of course. I'd rather have Flacco than not have Flacco, but I don't know what that nets at this point. I do know, for the most part, he hasn't taken a lot of abuse. For the most part, he's a year removed from the knee. Looks good, looks fit, still has a lot of gusto for the game, still a really competitive guy, despite going from, quite frankly, very, very middle class to becoming a wealthy guy, which I think changes a lot of guys at that level, especially when they're playing that kind of a position. Hey, I was here for Elvis Gerbach walking away, Doug. So, in Flacco, what do you see in Flacco at this point?
Well, and again, when I statistically, I look at stats, and that's like, okay, now I see a stat, and I go, now I have to go watch tape to figure out what that means. And I'll forgive unimaginative route concepts or receivers that really aren't on the same page, and I'll certainly forgive pressure to a point. With Flacco, I think there are year-to-year inconsistencies. I've referred to him before as kind of the Brett Saberhagen of the NFL because you never quite know what you're going to get. Obviously...
I hope this is an odd year, by the way, not an even year. He was always good in the odd years, right? Yeah.
Obviously a plus deep ball thrower, plus intermediate thrower. I think he's gotten a lot better. The Super Bowl year, where I think he threw, 11 touchdowns and no picks in the postseason, I think that was a big step for him. Having Bolden has helped him. Having Steve Smith has helped him. I think he's a complete quarterback. I think he just goes through phases, and they could be injury-related or, just offense-related, where his mechanics, again, the best way to describe it in my mind is they kind of fold up on him. He starts to push the ball. And guys with, howitzer arms have different ways of adjusting to the fact that they have to put different levels of arc and touch and velocity on the ball to make certain throws. And I've seen him struggle with that at times. And it's not an indictment of him. I see a lot. I believe one of the on-field reasons Colin Kaepernick is not in the league is because everything is a 96-mile-an-hour fastball. Whereas I look at a Dak Prescott and I go, my gosh, he knows how to throw it from every plane in 5 different speeds, which is really impressive. So, I think he's a scheme-dependent player to a point. You'd want to have a lot of explosive plays and receivers who can create that, which, going back to our first point, is why Maclin is such a great fit. Would I want him in, say, the Chiefs offense? No. But would I want Alex Smith in the Ravens offense? Oh my God, no. He's a guy who needs a certain kind of offense to thrive. And when he's had that in his career, he's been pretty amazing. So, obviously he's top tier. I just don't see that all the time, and that's always worrisome to me. Because the position is above all about consistency.
You said the Ravens are a top 3 or 4 defense. That's a hell of a statement, dude. I mean, you know what I mean? I almost feel like we want to tweet that out and say, really? Okay. So go ahead and make your case
based on based on the tape, based on the personnel, based on the additions, with all the if everyone stays healthy, if everyone gets on the same page, yeah, they're that good.
Well, what do you like? I mean, certainly the back end was diminished with Tavon Young's loss 2 weeks ago, and they go out and get Boykin, and they'll march forward. But there was definitely some dark times here a week ago, right? I mean, after Pitta goes down and Young goes down, these are two guys they were counting on. A guy caught almost 90 balls last year, and a week and a half later, they've kind of kick, save, and a beauty, I guess, with Maclin and with Boykin, and they're going to go battle. I'm worried about who gets after the quarterback. I'm worried about Terrell Suggs' age. I'm worried about Mosley coming back from an injury. I still worry about the back end and Jimmy Smith, that there's no plan B there, really, if you're going to go. And last year, the Des Bryants and the Odell Beckhams, the really good wide receivers that create matchup problems, that's what they do and why they make the big bucks. The Ravens really struggled late in games, especially when Jimmy Smith wasn't there, and that's why they lost a lot of games down the stretch.
Well, Smith is one of the big ifs. I think it's sort of a pass rush by committee. I think when healthy, they have a really, really good linebacker group. I like the way the defensive backfield is coming together, again, when everyone is healthy, because we saw this in Seattle. When Earl Thomas went down late in the season, and all of a sudden this secondary that was shutting everyone out gave up like 11 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks. So personnel makes a big difference. I'm just saying, based on the film I watched last year, based on the additions they made, I think if everything works together schematically and everyone stays healthy, it's at least a top 5 defense in my mind if that all happens.
Doug Farrar writes all things NFL as the lead scout at Bleacher Report. You can follow his journey at BR_Doug Farrar. That's 2 R's, AR at the end. And let's go around the league a little bit, man. What do you see that you like at this point? I've heard a lot of buzz about Tampa. I've heard a lot of buzz about Tennessee being improved teams. I think a lot of people are on the Houston bandwagon to some degree based on the defense and J.J. Watt coming back. Some thoughts about some teams out there that you think are ready to make a step here and become playoff teams?
Certainly Tennessee. They've John Robinson, when we talk about GMs who have done a really nice job in the last few years, I don't think John Robinson gets nearly enough credit. The coaching staff is doing a good job. They've brought Marcus Mariota along really well, almost to the point that you forget he was a spread quarterback, right? Because there are all these transitional issues and those things happen, but you don't really see that with Mariota. They went, where did they go? Yeah, 9-7 last year, big improvement. I could see that, opening up. I look at it, certainly Tampa Bay defense is good, but when I watched Jameis Winston last year, Mike Evans he's a good deep receiver, but he's more run and then stand in place and then beat up a cornerback to catch the ball. You add Deshaun Jackson to that picture, and that's another 9-7 team. Deshaun Jackson could be worth 2 or 3 wins to them because he just opens up the passing game so much, even when he's not a target. If I'm looking at other teams, Minnesota 8-8 last year. I think Mike Zimmer has that defense ready to unleash hell, and we talk about people that don't get enough credit. I don't think Sam Bradford gets nearly enough credit for the season he had last year. He completed, 72% of his passes, and when someone does that, you assume they're always dinking and dunking. That's not really the case. He was responsible for a lot of big plays. especially when Adam Thielen came along late in the year. I think the Vikings could really be on the way up.
He's a guy that's really in search of some redemption, right? As a number one pick and a guy that bounced around. And, franchise is gone for crying out loud at this point. He's a guy to me that would be very, very hungry at this point. And I think we've seen some of that from the Carson Palmers and some guys that have bounced around a little bit later on in their career. Bradford was one of those guys that never had a line, was never fully healthy. I've often wondered, if he got healthy, certainly, 3 franchises now and about 4 head coaches have bet on him at various points, right?
Yeah, and, he had the crap offensive lines, no receivers in St. Louis. The Philadelphia thing worked out pretty well, but here, still a crap line in Minnesota, but he has the right kinds of receivers. And you go back and for people who don't understand Bradford's potential for deep accuracy, hit YouTube, go watch his last season at Oklahoma. He has among the best accurate deep throwers I've ever seen in college football. That didn't go away. There just wasn't an infrastructure for it, and now there is. So I think I see nothing. He could still complete 68 to 70% of his passes and have twice as many deep plays next year or this upcoming season. And again, you're talking about adding wins that could really do that.
Last thing for you, Colin Kaepernick. I know you watch a lot of tape. I know you're politically active on the scene and discussing this and being a part of it. Where does he fit? And as an NFL quarterback, why would you want him on your team? Why would you want him to be your starter or your backup?
Well, where he fit was Seattle. Politically, socially. You had the kids up here at Garfield High School taking a knee in solidarity before every football game. Schematically, it would have been a fit with the Seahawks. The Seahawks don't want him. They say he's too good to be on our team as a backup, which is one of the biggest lines of horse crap I may have ever heard. For whatever reason, he's seen as toxic. And I think he may have to wait until a playoff team loses their starting quarterback to injury halfway through the season, and some other desperate situation.
You think he'll work again, though? You think he's good enough? Somebody's going to need.
Well, he's good. That's two different questions.
Okay,
Nestor. Is he good enough? Yes. Will he work again? I don't know. Obviously, there's those two questions should match up, but they don't always.
He is Doug Farrar, NFL lead scout at Bleacher Report. You can follow him at BR_Doug Farrar, and tens of thousands do. We appreciate the time. What are you listening to, man? You got any rock and roll recommendations for me right now? Any new albums from old artists? Anything good?
Let's see. I saw Mastodon at the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City last month, so I've been rocking them a lot.
Okay, Mastodon. All right. I'm
new album, Emperor of Sand. Go out and check it out.
Rock and roll, man. It says the guy in Seattle. Always great to visit with you, man. Keep the faith. We'll see you soon, pal.
Take care.
You got it, Doug Farrar from Bleacher Report. He is BR_Doug Farrar. That's FARRAR. Very easy to find him. And he's always breaking down some film and how the game is played. He's got top 10 most accurate quarterback list coming out at Bleacher Report later on in the week. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from wherever you are. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. That's powered up by PlanetFitness.com, where you need to be getting in shape for $10 a month. There's one right around the corner from you. Learn more at PlanetFitness.com. Last but never least, breaking news, and it's never good during Ravens mini camps if you get one of these. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. We hope for no breaking news from Owings Mills. The Orioles have been shuttling pitchers and players and DLs and backs and forths, and that all happens on the WNST Tech Service first. Dennis will be here on Thursday driving you home from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live right here on Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.